freedom, pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our daily lives, from our relationships to our community relations to our politics to our economy. Every aspect of our lives is affected by the character crisis that we've been in for the last several decades, and that simply must turn itself around. And toward that end, I blog at manipulative-people.com or drgeorgesimon.com. If you Google or navigate over to either one of those web addresses, you will find my blog and timely articles on various issues pertaining to character matters. And then my 4 books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller that is regarded by many as the definitive book on manipulation and manipulative personalities. And then my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, my in-depth study of all the various disturbed characters out there and the kinds of problems they pose for relationships and how to deal with them, and most especially what to look for when you're going to get help so that you don't experience what many people call therapy-induced trauma. And then my book, The Judas Syndrome, for the Christian faith community. And then lastly, my book, How Did We End Up Here? With my co-author, Dr. Kathy Armistead. How Did We End Up Here? Being the survivor's guide, the toxic relationship survivor's guide to navigating through this character-disturbed world of ours. Recovering from a toxic relationship, navigating your way through a relationship that's been toxic and that you have hope will improve, how to judge the character of a person, how to judge genuine remorse, contrition, and various things that will help you deal effectively with your relationships and also make better judgments about relationships in the future. And also the workshops I've been doing for cross-country education. Got some big ones coming up in a week from now in New Orleans, Louisiana, and Mobile, Alabama, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And then I'm off for 3 weeks before heading out to California, sunny California. But before that, I think I'll be going to Columbus, Ohio, and Indianapolis, Indiana, and then Cincinnati, And then lastly, I'll be going to the Philadelphia area. I think first stop is Harrisburg. Then I'm not sure the other city, and then Philadelphia. And that ends my live tours with Cross Country Education. For the meantime, I will do some tours for them off and on, if requested. And I would urge you, if you're in the area, if you'll look on my website at drgeorgesimon.com or manipulative-people.com, we're combining my website and my blog into a multi-site composite kind of site. And you'll find all the information there you need about the workshops coming up. Or you can go to the crosscountryeducation.com website, or it is now Vine Education, VYNE, education.com. And search under my name, George Simon, and you'll come up with all the live seminar venues through June the 2nd of this year. After that, I'm going to be cutting back and semi-retiring once again. So I invite you to mosey on over to the website and take advantage of all the timely articles on there, all the many, many, many articles, helpful articles that will help you navigate through your troubled relationship. And also to avail yourself of my books. But also, if you want to call into the program tonight and join the conversation, we're going to be continuing the discussion about a couple of topics. Number one, the topic of narcissism that we've been talking about for several weeks. And then number two, we're going to be continuing the discussion on the 10 Commandments of Character that I've been writing about on the blog, namely acting with sincerity of heart and purpose. And that is the 10th and final commandment that I soon, hopefully, will be expounding upon in more depth in a full book that will be available at all the major outlets and on Amazon. How to Lead a Significant Life will be the subtitle. The 10 Commandments of Character, due out sometime this spring. I'll have more about that later. But if you want to join the conversation tonight, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And I'll be happy to take your call. Well, another week. I don't know how many of you tonight will be watching the Academy Awards. I imagine several of you will. It should be an interesting night because, pretty interestingly, I think there will be many political statements made, and that's just typical. That's very typical for the Academy Awards these days, and I think that's just going to be the nature of the beast for some time to come. So if you are one of those folks that's going to be watching tonight, it'll be interesting to see what both the host, who I think is Jimmy Kimmel this time, what he'll have to say, especially in the political arena, especially about some of the more timely topics involving our president, President Trump, and then also what the various actors have to say when they pick up their awards, and we'll see just how political it gets. I'm going to make a prediction right now that it's probably going to be one of the most political Academy Awards in a long time. Probably not since the Vietnam War will we see a more political Academy Awards program. as we'll probably see tonight. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm also going to be talking tonight about something that I don't usually talk about. I don't talk very much about topics of faith, and I don't talk very much about religious topics, but I'm going to do so tonight in a more earnest way than I have in the past. So if you're one of those folks who doesn't particularly care for those discussions, just be forewarned. But that's going to be my intention tonight. I had an experience last night I want to share. I went to see the play Sister Act at our local community theater, our repertory theater. A friend of ours is a superb musician and a wonderful music director, and he was the musical director for this production. And the cast was phenomenal, of course. But the messages in the play were so profound and so touching and so moving and so hit home with me that I just want to kind of discuss and ponder out loud with you tonight some of the many messages that came through at this play. Had some realizations, some very, very deep realizations that I want to share about the interconnectedness of us all and where we have to be going, literally, if we're going to survive, the human race is going to have to be moving in a particular direction. There will be bumps in the road, no doubt. But, we live in a world that is so potentially dangerous. Just this week, a couple of things happened that underscore that whole thing. There is really no safety or security. We rest in really a delusion that we can do all the right things to ensure our safety and security. But we can't. We just simply can't. And one of the things that happened this week is that another internet breach was realized. And in this time, more than likely, just about everybody's passwords were stolen for their online accounts. So who knows what could happen as a result, and who knows who's responsible for it. These days, several entities, not just rogue hackers, but several political entities, even nations, engage in this kind of cyber warfare where they're looking to disrupt things and they're looking to undermine the security folks seem to have with their bank accounts, their credit accounts, et cetera, et cetera. And, we've become so technology dependent. I know every time I fly, my heart sinks just a little bit because there could be one of those episodes where one of the main computer networking stations goes down for one of the airlines, and then it's just a nightmare. You wonder what we ever did before computers, but the fact is it's a nightmare experience. When something like that happens, the entire system gets so disruptive, and there's a ripple effect. So things just literally come to a standstill. And the same thing would be true for, say, an economic calamity, whereby hackers or a foreign government or some other enemy of sorts, or just some rogue who just wanted to make a name for himself or herself, messed with the financial system, caused a collapse, of course, of sorts, and literally brings the country, maybe even the world, to its knees. It's not unthinkable. It's not unthinkable at all. And the other thing that happened this past week is the revelations about the attack on Kim Jong Un's brother-in-law in the Malaysia airport, where two women apparently walked up to him, smeared some cream on his face. This happens to be the most deadly nerve agent ever, and it caused a heart attack, and he died. And this is one of those things where if it hadn't been caught by cameras, this is one of those things that would be very, very hard to tell, you know. This kind of thing could happen. This kind of thing could happen very surreptitiously. You know, somebody's got this substance on their fingertips, so they've got some kind of protection on their own fingers so that the agent doesn't infect them. Maybe they give somebody a gentle pat on the cheek. Maybe even feign a caress or two. And then 20 minutes later, the person is dead. And some of these agents are so toxic that truly a few ounces in the water supply could have catastrophic effects. So we live in a very, very dangerous world, a very dangerous world. And there are some really bad actors out there. And some are afflicted with a truly radical ideology that threatens civilization itself. So the question becomes, how do we survive? How do we survive this danger? Well, we could build up arms. We could say that our security lies in being so well armed that nobody thinks twice about aggressing against us in any way, or if they do, if they dare to, the retaliation would be so catastrophic that it would be justice meted out quickly and severely, and no one would think. We'd make an example and no one would think to basically mess with us again. And that's the solution that we've used for years now. And it just frankly hasn't worked. There are still very dangerous people out there. There are still very dangerous ideologies. And the question becomes, how do you really build a better, safer world? And my notion about that, my opinion about that, is that it all starts with character. It all starts with character, and it all starts very early. In what we teach, we know that what we believe, the values and the ways of thinking about things that we internalize early on in our lives, those things determine in large measure how we're going to conduct ourselves in our relations with our fellow man. And right now, I think that we face a real decision point, because the world is a very highly interconnected place, but also a very dangerous place. Trust has eroded pretty severely, pretty significantly. And when that happens, things become a powder keg. Things become a powder keg. I don't remember a time when it felt this uneasy, either domestically or abroad. And it's easy to point the finger and say that, there's just a particular madman or particularly crazy group in charge. These radical ideologies, these radical persons, these personalities, they don't just pop up spontaneously and for no good reason. They're almost always in response to perceived great injustice. And we don't seem to get it when it comes to the solution. So here's where I'm going to veer off a little bit from my usual tack and from my usual perspective. And for all of you in the audience who may have a problem with this is your time to say, well, we'll listen another time. But I'm going to get pretty faith-based tonight. As a matter of fact, you may hear me do so more frequently on this program. But I adhere to a particular religious discipline that teaches that we've been given all the answers that we need about how to make this life the richest and the best life, and how to improve the lot of all humankind. And I believe that the person who gave us this advice is more than just a wise old sage, which with some flowery sounding idealistic words about what a more idealistic world would look like and what it would take to get there. Idealistic but impractical words. I believe this person is more than that. I believe that he gave us just what we needed to hear about what would constitute the fullest, most unbelievable life we could imagine. And the answer, of course, to what he advocated is unconditional, unreserved, with everything you got, completely self-emptying love. That you literally give yourself away, that you give everything away. That you remain attached to nothing because, frankly, you can't take any of it with you anyway. And everyone's days are numbered. We didn't earn the right to be here. And we really basically have no say about our exit. The only thing that is certain is that there will be an exit. That's the only thing certain. So, how do you live a life to its fullest? Well, we're told that you do it by loving unreservedly. And in our country right now, Such loving seems to be in short supply. We are a very, very divided country. Very divided. And in order to come together, we're going to have to really, really work at mending some fences and building bridges. We have to talk to one another. We have to make it personal. You know, it's so easy to sit back in your chair and talk about this group or that group and to use the impersonal they this and they that. But as soon as it starts to get personal, your perspective necessarily has to change. As soon as you get down to the individual level, and it's nothing but heart to heart, soul to soul, then things really change. Really change. So I'm watching this play last night, and it's a really good play. If you get a chance to see it, please do. I liked it infinitely better than the movie Sister Act, which was kind of cute and much more of a comedy. This, a comedy to be sure, but really inspiring, with so many really good messages. So at any rate, I'm watching this, and then something becomes really, really crystal clear to me in just a flash moment. In a flash moment. Part of the plot at the time, during one of the routines, during one of the musical numbers, was a statement about just how interconnected we all are. Whether we like it or not, whether we realize it or not. We are all in this together. And we will either ignore one another, we'll either be at odds with one another, or we will try to find some common ground and to really help one another. The key is in the kind of relationship we have. And it starts with the relationship we have with ourselves. And so that's what I've been writing about on the blog. And I finished a summary article on the 10th commandment, having to do with authenticity and genuineness. I finished what is probably going to be the last article in that series just yesterday. Usually I post the articles on Friday, but when I'm touring and sometimes can't get back until late, that has to wait until the following day. So it posted yesterday. But the issue is whether or not we will know ourselves well enough to know our true place in the world, and then to see that bigger picture of interconnectedness between us and every other living thing that there is. You know, there's hope. Science has hope that as we find more and more planets that orbit suns and form solar systems, and as they are the right size and the right constituency or the right constitution, so that the capacity at least to cradle or nurture life is present. There's hopes among the scientific community that we will find some form of life elsewhere in the universe. I don't know whether that's true or not. Who knows? Perhaps it is. Perhaps we've even been visited before. Who knows? Who knows? There are all kinds of theories out there. But one thing is for sure. This universe is more vast, more complex, more dynamic, more totally incomprehensible and awe-inspiring than we can even imagine. Man, there's a universe out there. Billions and billions and billions of stars. Wow. Same thing with galaxies, any number of which might hold solar systems. And any number of those solar systems might host planets, or might contain planets that have the ingredients for life. We don't know. There's so much we don't know. And because of the time involved, there could be things going on right now in a distant world that we know nothing about. Perhaps they're just now inventing radio or television or motion pictures. Perhaps they do, and perhaps they don't have a form of currency. Perhaps they do, perhaps they don't have any kind of what we call civilization. And the other question is, do they even resemble us in form if they exist? Or did their evolutionary path take an entirely different twist? Is the basis for life, if life exists elsewhere, is it even based on carbon, life cycle of carbon? Who knows? There's so much to learn, so much to learn. But one thing is clear, and that is that if we're not relating to each other in a manner that is both constructive and loving, we always are at the precipice of really destruction. Because these days especially, all it takes is one crazed person. Just one crazed person, just one person alone could potentially infect, say with some agent, with toxic agent, could infect the water supplies of a number of cities, causing mass casualties. And that's just one person. We live in very, very dangerous times. But the good news about appreciating our interconnectedness is that we could kind of get into the groove and go with the flow of the energy of life. We can make the decision that we're going to be part of an enterprise that builds not only character, but that puts into place those structures, those principles, even those people who advance the cause of life unreservedly, and who bring with them the kind of love that it's going to take to see us through to the next level, where we're no longer worried about our ultimate destruction because we have seen to it to eliminate that kind of threat. Sounds pie in the sky, doesn't it? But I'm here to tell you that because of the risks involved, especially in our completely technically dependent age, because of the risks involved, that false little sense of security you have, it could be undermined in a minute. In a minute. We place our trust in so many things. If we just have enough money in the bank, if we just have the nicest home, if we just have this or that in the way of material comfort in our home, all these things are delusions. Because the reality is that just as this great spiritual teacher said 2,000 years ago, you could be asked to forfeit your life at any given moment, any second, any breath that we draw. Could be our last. And so the only thing that really matters, at the end of the day is how full and rich your life is and has been before you're asked to forfeit it. And you will be asked. It's only a question of when. There are some things that are very certain, as you know, death and taxes. It's an old joke, but there's great truth there. We're all going to die. So the question is, the only real question is, how do we live? How do we live? Do we live checking our bank accounts 24 times a day, wondering how things are going, wondering how secure we are financially? Forgetting, allowing ourselves to forget that any moment in time could bring that tremendous storm, that tornado perhaps, that wipes out all your earthly belongings, including your home. So what really matters? What really matters? Well, yeah, on this program we talk about character mattering, but what do we mean by that? What in the way of our personal ethics really does matter? And I think the answer came to me last night when I was watching this play. Well, it didn't just come to me. It's not like the first time. It just really deeply resonated, so deeply resonated that my wife and I, we looked at each other and we had an instant reaction to it. The realization that whether we like it or not, or whether we realize it or not, we are all spiritually interconnected. And what we want in our core of cores, in the very heart of our hearts, what we want is pretty universal. We just want to love and be loved. We want the freedom that comes along with loving and knowing that we are loved. It's like getting out of jail free when you're playing Monopoly. So that's what I've been writing about on the blog. And this past yesterday, I wrote a relatively short but to the point piece about authenticity, about genuineness, and how it invites, by its very nature, vulnerability. When you're real, you can feel a different energy. Life is different. You look at things different. Things impact you differently. You see the world through an entirely different kind of lenses, maybe without lenses, without distortion for the first time. And it all has to do with not putting your trust in anything or anyone else other than the force behind this universe. There, I was more reserved. I didn't say God. Most people know what I meant. It is amazing to me. It's amazing to me how many folks equate their faith with their religious practices and with their tenets of belief, when in fact, that's just not it. It's just not it. So what is it? Well, what it is seeing a much greater reality. For those who practice the Christian faith, it would be seeing the kingdom that's already here, but kept from our eyes by our own pride and prejudice. We have this vanity. It's our most fundamental downfall, our original sin, if you will. This vanity that prompts us to think, prompts us to believe that if we just do things a certain way and we take care to provide for ourselves the best we can, that we'll lead a long, full life and we'll be happy. When in fact, not one of us knows when the hour comes. When we might be able to, when we might be asked to surrender everything. And we have to be willing. We have to be willing. Now, you know that I just posted on YouTube a brief clip, poorly done one, a brief clip of the interview that I gave with Vice News Tonight during my San Francisco workshop. HBO's news and documentary program. So I grant that interview. And I know full well as the interview is progressing, based on the questions they're asking me, that they want me to go on record and they want me to be vehemently attacking our president and his narcissism. And I held it within reasonable bounds, ethical bounds. As our canons direct, I did not, would not, still would not, confer a formal diagnosis as a psychologist. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't confer a diagnosis at this time because there's not enough information. It's called the Goldwater Rule because at the time Barry Goldwater was running for president, the scare tactics that were out there in the media were just unbelievable. And then on top of that, you had a lot of folks who vehemently disagreed with Mr. Goldwater's policies. And so they were willing to use their professional credentials to question the character and the sanity of the person making the offers to sell certain merchandise. And as you know, there is no good that can come of that. No good. We do live in character-impaired times. And unfortunately, among our leaders, there is no shortage of character disturbance. I make that point very clearly in my book, Character Disturbance. And if there were ever a time when we needed healing and the healing influences of well-meaning people, it's now. It's really time for a movement. It's time for decent people of all persuasions to join together and start talking to one another. Character really does matter. Who we are counts. It's not just about what we do. It's not just about the opinions we hold. It's not just about the actions we take. It's about who we are as people. What kind of people? Are we a compassionate country? Are we an empathetic one? Are we a just society, truly just, where everyone is treated equally under the eyes of the law, and where we have appropriate regard for the sensibilities and the vulnerabilities of others? That's the big question. Now, some of you may have some opinions about that. Maybe some of you would like to share them. I don't know. But if you do, we have a few minutes left to the program. So the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296 for all you folks not already parked on the couch waiting for the Academy Awards to start. That's another disturbing little thing. I heard that unlike in years past, the network carrying the program, which I believe is ABC, they're going to charge premium fees to their affiliates for carrying the live red carpet stuff because it's become increasingly popular. Folks get a much more close-up view of their favorite celebrities, and they get to it appears as though they're first-hand witnesses to the events of the day. So it's a very popular segment. So now the network, ABC, wants to charge a premium price for access to those events. And so the question becomes, is it always about money? It's just one of those big questions. Is it always about money? Is that one of the idols that you worship. There are several things that go into this makeup of character, and some sense of a higher power, or higher authority, or bigger picture, larger reality. Maybe that's the best word to use. Larger reality. Recognizing that can change everything. Now, I have to tell you, I've had to have some very sobering experiences to come to this place of appreciation for that bigger picture and my role in it, and what I'm supposed to be doing to, in the words of the person that I profess to follow, help build the kingdom, help build a better, more higher power oriented society, whereby we are interested, truly interested and invested in the welfare of all, the greater good. So it took some very sobering moments for me to even get to that place. But there's always the intrusion of the world and its demands, and always the temptation for us to get back into our brains and out of this larger awareness and start thinking about the petty things that really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. They don't matter at all. What really matters is that we cradle this precious gift of life that we've all been given. I tell my folks at workshops all the time when I'm talking about the 10 essential commandments of character discovery, 10 essential commandments of character development. I talk about how we are not entitled to anything. That's just the reality of it. Who earned this existence? What price did you pay for it? It was completely unasked and freely given. Some people are even resentful about that. But every breath that we draw is a gift. And it's incumbent upon us to hold this miracle that we see before us, this absolute miracle, this reality that in the vastness of space, around a relatively insignificant sun, in a huge galaxy among billions of galaxies, that in this one unique place in all of the universe, this blue, cloud-covered planet has nurtured human life. Fragile, vulnerable human life. And other life as well. And that we have a duty, truly a duty. If we're going to survive, we have a duty to meet this miracle with some appropriate awe and reverence. And out of that awe and reverence should come some felt obligation to honor, to truly honor, and to serve that force that brings everything together in the universe. We, as Christian believers, profess that we worship but one entity, and that entity that we call God is in fact a relationship a relationship between three different faces of the very, very same reality. The life giver, the product of that loving creation, and the love that flows between. Isn't that something? That's what we profess we believe. And if we do truly believe it, and we do truly believe that the entity we follow is, in fact, the purest, most broad, the most infinite that you can imagine. Love in the flesh. Then the world would be a much, much different place. We're commanded by the person that we say we follow. We are commanded to love. It's not a suggestion. And we're even given some guidance as to how to do it. In other words, in what measure. Just as we are to regard the force, the entity that brought life upon us with unwavering love, whole heart, whole mind, whole body, whole soul, whole strength, everything, unreservedly, giving everything you have. We're also asked to do that with ourselves and with one another. We're told that love itself is the answer, that only love, or only God, if you will, only true, perfect love can save us. Nothing else can save us. Not enough armaments, not enough missiles, not enough technology. None of that can save us. All of that can disappear in just a minute. And God help us if our technology, if some worm got into our internet and infected all the computers everywhere, it would bring the entire country to its knees. There is no security there. The only security, the only safety is in love. Ultimately, that will save us if we will believe in it. The world looks differently. And it even responds differently when you operate in love. You need to try it sometime. And we're told to do it, and we're told to do it unreservedly. How many of us do? That's the big question. That's the big question. We've never been more divided. We've never been more at one another's throats. I put some videos up, and some haters were there right away, within moments. I think it was within 20 minutes after I posted a video on YouTube of the outtake of my interview from my workshop when I was talking about the president. It took no more than 20 minutes for all the haters to show up. Keep this in mind, folks, as we sail on till next week for another edition of Character Matters. What really matters is sincerity of heart, purpose, and all the love that we need. See you again next week. I'm Dr. George Simon. Thanks for being here.